La da 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 da. I'm sinking. Hey everybody, welcome to Monday Morning Musings. Ooh-wee. Ooh, you can cut the tension with a knife in this country. But first, I'd like to talk about the fun Halloween, or at least the fun I tried to have on Halloween. I dressed up as John Wick. I hope you all had a great Halloween. I've eaten 3 pieces of Halloween candy so far, just 3 pieces of Halloween candy, and I feel pretty good about that discipline. We'll see how I do later today. In celebration of Halloween and also in honor of Mr. Sean Connery, who passed away recently, I had 2 martinis dressed up as John Wick, and then afterwards I watched The Last Crusade, and I fell asleep halfway through because I was a little bit wiped out after doing the podcast with Terrence and just kind of going through the whole day and also being sad. Halloween's one of my favorite night outs ever, and I've had so many wonderful times and wonderful memories on that holiday, especially as an adult, because you would think in your 20s, like, I'm too old to trick or treat, obviously. Well, you should be, stopping in your teens. How do I really celebrate Halloween if I don't drink back in the day? But now that I imbibe in almost all the good stuff, if it grows in the ground, pound it down, definitely a lot different experience. But it's the costumes. It's becoming a different character. It's the expression of making this character come to life for you. And sometimes you can find different facets of your personality or who you are, or your friends can see a different side of you. That's always so much fun. And to go out and see throngs of people dressed up, having a like-minded celebration of, hey, I'm going to represent this character or this idea or this thought. I saw a couple costumes out there. I did see a Pickle Rick, which helped lift my confidence and hope in humanity, which was fun. And then he was with some friends. Another guy was dressed as a penguin, and another guy was a cactus and had a hat on that says, I'm thorny. And he goes, I'm a thorny cactus. So these people were making an effort. But happy Halloween, happy post-Halloween. The beauty about it was the blue moon, and to see how big the moon was, not just at night, but the following morning. I woke up early to see the sunrise next to Mount Rainier off the huge valley that I live on top of a big hill from, and it was quite gorgeous. So as we continue on into this very chilly fall season, this fatal autumn, I hope that the seasons will give us a little bit more sunshine, or at least this season will give us a little bit more sunshine before the snows come. And I have heard that we're going to get some harsh snows this winter, and with it being this cold this quickly, I don't deny it. But we'll see. I'm prepared. Hopefully my gutters are prepared. I got to clean those out. I enjoyed The Last Crusade. I passed out, as I said, but then I watched the rest of it the following morning, and I hadn't seen it in quite some time. I had watched Raiders of the Lost Ark recently, and that was always a fun adventure. I have a poster of Raiders of the Lost Ark in my theater room, in my den room. It reminds me wherever I go to always have an adventure. I had it next to my door in my apartment in Burbank, so whenever I left my studio apartment, it was a reminder, like, life's an adventure. Have some fun out there. Take a little bit of a risk, but don't be too crazy. The Last Crusade is my favorite Indiana Jones film because I watched it the most as a kid, and back in my religious days, seeing these objects that were described in biblical texts, Septuagint texts, all sorts of religious texts in the past, and even in historical texts from the surrounding region of this sort of device that could conquer enemies. And when you read the description and more of the understanding through the lens of a scientist and modern day understanding of technology, it sounds like this Ark of the Covenant was some sort of battery, and it could harness radiation or some sort of radioactive power, because if men who were not assigned to carry the Ark, like there was the brother of Aaron who tried to stabilize it and he died. It's like, what? Why? He's a good person. He's like, marching with the army of God at this sense. Why did he have to die by touching the Ark? Well, because it's radioactive. It'll kill you. So the presentation of the Ark in the Ark, I know this microphone's a little heavy, but I'm doing Freddie Mercury style now with these new mics. The symbolism of the Ark and also the potential reality of a technology like the Ark has fascinated many scholars and many people for years and years and years. The technology in the story comes from Egypt. The Ark of the Covenant is an ancient Egyptian story. But if they had access to that type of technology, maybe it was a battery that could harness either power, exude power, provide them warmth, heat as they continue out in the desert. A lot of intriguing descriptions in the biblical text, which is a man-made document that was handed down and translated across many different priests and organizations within the Catholic faith until King James was caught having sex with his boyfriend, and the church said, you need to pay a penance for this, and King James says, okay, I'll commission a new Bible in English, and there we go. Even though it was illegal to have the Bible in English for years and years and years, and men and women were killed for trying to translate in English, but that's a good book called Fire in the Bones by William Tinsdale and all sorts of people that were trying to get the information to the people to break away from the authoritarian organization that was the church and the state at once. So you have these ancient stories, these ancient technologies that many cultures have within their background. And currently, if you were a betting man or a betting woman, I would bet that the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia. There is a city in Ethiopia that claims they have it. They will not let anybody see it. And from modern-day archaeologists and a real-life Indiana Jones such as Graham Hancock, who has done the research, says that he's pretty confident there's something there that they are guarding. So with the Ark of the Covenant being the established movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark for Indiana Jones, then you had Temple of Doom, which technically is a prequel, fun romp throughout the jungle. But the Last Crusade, it's about the Holy Grail. That's the quest. But honestly, the script is about a father and a son reconciling. That's the heart of the script. And to have Sean Connery as this debonair James Bond character for years and years and years, playing a more intellectual, nerdy type of character that is aghast when he sees his son murder Nazis, defend themselves against Nazis, but take down Nazis and take out other people. But then he starts to realize this is war. And when Marcus Brody and him are in the tank and Sean Connery takes out the guy and the guy dies, Marcus is like, look what you did. Look what you did. And Sean Connery's like, this is war, Marcus. So the character development with Sean Connery's character is awesome. And they had to set up the father-son dynamic, right? And you will find this is kind of a pattern that I've seen in a lot of third movies in a trilogy where they want the tree to grow larger, right? The tree being the characters, the sustenance, the story, where can they go from here? Well, in order for the tree to grow taller, to grow bigger, you have to have the roots run deeper. So the roots are the background of Indiana Jones. And within that first sequence, which stars the late River Phoenix, you see Indy not afraid of snakes, how he becomes traumatized and terrified of snakes by falling in that snake pit and that giant snake, looking at him and stuff. So you get to see the trauma of why he hates snakes. And the deep in the bones passion of Indiana Jones with the cross of Coronado. This cross belongs in a museum. It has so much historical significance. And here it was deposited in Utah in a mine. So he goes on this adventure to try to save the cross. He gets home. He tries to yell at his dad, hey, something just happened. His dad's like, I'm doing something right now, and it's his diary. So already you're getting the sense of there's a disconnect between the father and the son. The sheriff comes in. He's like, hey, these guys said that you have something of theirs. But the adventurer, who he's kind of this proto-Indiana Jones type, but he looks at the River Phoenix's character as Indy and goes, you lost today, kid, but it doesn't mean you have to like it. And he gives him the hat. And then Indy looks up from the hat, and it's modern-day Indy finding those guys years later to get that same cross. So it's just a wonderful opening to an adventure that establishes the dynamic between a father and a son, the passion for Indy, kind of where it comes from, and now we're going to be moving forward into the next adventure. Pretty tight script writing at the beginning, especially when you're trying to introduce new characters in a third film. So many of you are familiar with the story. Indy gets the diary, find out his father's been missing. And when they go on this adventure, Dr. Schneider, and just kind of like almost disgusted, but kind of impressed, and doesn't really know what to say to his father when he finds out that his father had slept with the woman as well. And Sean Connery's like, I'm just a man as anybody as the next one, and Indiana Jones is like, I was the next man, Dad. So the whole we slept with the same woman kind of thing, it works so well because this is Sean Connery as, you know, the actor, but he's playing a character that is, you know, the flip side of the coin. And when he goes on this adventure with his son, when they finally have a minute or two to discuss their relationship, Indy felt like his dad just wasn't there for him. And Indy's dad, you know, Henry Jones Sr., is like, well, I was a good father. Did I tell you every day to brush your teeth, to go to bed, all this other stuff? No, I respected your privacy. And Indy's like, you know, you're so lost in your world. But they go through this crazy adventure and they reconcile when, you know, Indy has to save his dad and Marcus. They're in the tank. An incredible action set piece. I mean, everything holds up. There's a number of shots that you can tell they're in front of a green screen, but you are so involved in the adventure, you're having a great time. That entire airplane sequence, though, when the planes are coming and they take down one in the tunnel and it goes through the tunnel and the guy's going faster than them and looking at them. It's just I can imagine what it was like in the theaters to see that film and just the audience going crazy. I can almost hear the laughter of the audience enjoying it. And then Sean Connery looking around, and he and his son are, you know, backed into a corner against these rocks. But then Henry Jones sees the birds, takes out his umbrella, has all the birds fly up and take out the other guy in the plane. And you see this sense of connection when Sean Connery's like, I just remember my Charlemagne, let my rocks and the trees and the birds of the sky be my army. And then he just looks at him, and it's such a beautiful moment. This is what makes Steven Spielberg a great director, any great director, is after that entire sequence, you as an audience are now catching your breath of, wow, they made it. That was incredible. Lucasfilm, the production team, put together this sequence that was amazing and still holds up. And you see Indy on the beach looking at his father, who's, you know, walking with his umbrella. Just this sense of, wow, like happiness, pride, connection, satisfaction. And you see Harrison Ford, who's this grizzled adventurer who's seen some serious shit, look like a little boy looking up to his father for a few moments. I never saw those scenes that way as a younger man, but now in my 30s, ooh, and again, that's why these are classics. They'll mean something to you later in life, even though it's the same film. So as we continue on to the adventure, we get to the end with the Holy Grail, and we have the bad guy describing like, oh, you know, Hitler will do what his want, the Nazis will come and go, but I'll live forever. And that's what he really wants. And this knight who's been guarding the Grail for 700-something years, you know, what is your intention for the Grail? What is your intention? And when Indiana Jones is talking to the knight and he has to do it to save his father. And I didn't really get it when I was younger, but Ursa totally sets up the guy to drink from the wrong Grail and die. I mean, she gives Indy that look, and Indy's looking at her like, what are you doing? But I'm not going to say anything. But she was greedy. She wanted, as Henry Jones says, she wanted it as a prize. But here we are in this moment that Henry Jones Sr. has devoted pretty much his entire adult life, 30 years, to finding. His son following in his footsteps. Marcus Brody being there. Sala being there. It's all these friends that have been through so many adventures together, and this was the adventure of a lifetime. Truly the Last Crusade. And there is the Grail. Right there, he saves his father. So back in the day, in the Nintendo days, the regular Nintendo, the NES, there was a Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade video game. And it took me 8 years to beat this game because I didn't have the cognitive discipline or I'd become smart enough as a kid to understand the puzzles. And I would watch the movie to try to get how to solve these puzzles. And in the game, towards the end of the game, you have to walk across that pathway, which is the second part of the booby traps of all three. And but the name of God, right? And then you have Sean Connery go, the name of God. And then he's like, but Jehovah starts with an I. And then Indy goes, J, and he falls through. Well, in the video game, I would spell it with an I, and I'd fall through. I'm like, what is happening? I'm doing it right. In the video game, you spelled it with the J. They messed up. So it took me years to figure that out until finally I'm like, I'm just going to spell Jehovah. And I did. And then I beat the game. And it took me literally 8 years from the day that I first played it, growing up as a kid, and I finally beat it. It was one of the greatest accomplishments in my video game career. set me off on the path that I am today. But damn, that was a hard game. If I can figure out, well, if they have it on the Nintendo Entertainment emulator or the Nintendo Online on Switch, if they have The Last Crusade, dude, I'm streaming that. Because even the music in its 8-bit form is from the movie, and the Nazi theme, bum, 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 ba-dun, dun, 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 dun. It's so ominous that it feels, it's from the same composer, John Williams. So it's not as powerful as the Imperial March, but just the semblance of doom, dread, and this obstacle they have to overcome is so good. John Williams is beyond human. The amount of incredible work he has done. He's made us all better humans because of his work. So here we are in the final scene. The bad guys are dead. Ursa has the grail, and she's crossing the seal, and he's like, Ursa, don't move, stop. We can't, you know what the knight said, we can't leave with the grail. That is the cost of immortality. The grail cannot leave the seal. Well, she doesn't listen. She's trying to grab it, and Indy's like, I can't hold on, give me your other hand, and she dies, she falls. Then Indy's in the same place. And here we have, it's so beautiful. And again, this is why this script is about a father and a son reconciling. The Grail is just the MacGuffin. It's about the father and the son. But here you have this object that Henry Jones Sr. has devoted his life to, and his son is within reach. His son can almost reach it, and you hear it. He's like, Dad, I can almost get it. Dad, I can almost get it. And throughout the whole movie, he never uses his name until at that moment, and you hear Sean Connery say, Indiana, and it's so good because you can feel it. Oh, I'm getting emotional even saying it, but you can feel it. And it's the music, it's the music, the magic of production, of editing, of shooting it, of the camera shot where Indy's, dangling and his dad's right there. And he says, Indiana, let it go. Let it go. And he does. And he grabs, Indy gives him his other hand and he pulls him up. And it's so beautiful because even though Henry Jones made the mistake or the disconnection was there because of his passion for this, his son was more important. And that is all Indy wanted, was to have the approval and a connection with his father that way. And I think it was such a payoff of the obsession that Henry Jones Sr. had, that it was worth it, and that he was completely satisfied, and there was no way that he wanted to lose his son over it. And you saw that within the tank sequence, which is so great, when the tank goes over and they all think that Indy died, and they're looking over the cliff, and Henry's saying, I didn't tell him everything. It only would have taken me 5 minutes, One of those father to son talks. And Indy's climbing up the roots, and he looks over the cliff with them, and then he turns and he sees them, and you can just see the elation in Henry Jones's face from the wonderful acting of Sean Connery. I thought I lost you, boy. And Indiana Jones has a line that I had to go back in the subtitles and read, and it said, I thought you meant to, sir. Kind of like a line of, like, I thought you always wanted to get rid of me type thing. And that type of emotion and embrace, again, is something that Indy had been longing for. And then when his dad's hugging him and they have that moment, then he lets him go, and Indy just collapses because he's so tired. He's so tired, and he's yelling, come on, what are you waiting for? We're so close. And Indy's just trying to catch his breath, and then his hat blows by. And the beautiful reaction from Harrison Ford, I had to go back and rewind it, because he looks at the hat thinking it's like a tumbleweed at first, and he does a double take where he looks and he goes, he can't even believe it's there. What a wonderful adventure. What a wonderful adventure and a wonderful film. No wonder it still stands up to the test of time. And for me, as I dive further into screenwriting, it's a great reminder of why that film holds up. It's because it's about the father and son connection. The adventure is what makes that connection happen to reconcile, but that truly is the heart of the film. So watch it if you haven't watched it, and rest in peace to the late Sean Connery, 90 years old. What a career. Wow. So, the magic of Lucasfilm continues with The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1. And we're going to be reviewing that full on in my next JGray report. That's right, the report is coming back. But I was so elated to see what I saw on screen. I have been waiting my entire life to see those characters and creatures appear on screen in any form like that. I'm so excited for this entire season. I really, really hope that I can live up to that first episode, because that was a doozy. But Star Wars is in good hands if Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are at the helm. All right, folks. Now, this is going to be some heavy shit that we're going to talk about, and I'm fucking terrified about tomorrow because of any and all type of situations that can happen. So let me just break down these thoughts and wish us all the best of luck, and that we can have cool heads, no violence, and we can talk out our problems and remember that this country is a family. No matter how much we may not get along on certain policies, we can talk it out and agree to disagree on a number of things, as long as they don't hurt or cause detriment to anyone else, right? But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be the case because of echo chambers and cults and all sorts of stuff. So the nation, the world, is standing at the edge of a knife. The separation of church and state, to me, is absolutely necessary to have the type of representative government, the type of democratic republic that this nation was founded on, as not just freedom of religion, but freedom from religion in a secular state that can use technology and science, empathy, empirical evidence, and honestly, wisdom to try to govern people. Wisdom from the human experience, wisdom from past human experiences that have taught us so much. But that has been under attack for quite some time. Cults will make good people do horrible things. And when you are stuck in a mindset that demands all the facts align in a certain way, and if they don't belong in this category of your worldview, then they're either fake news or some sort of attempt to dissuade you. I understand what that mentality was like because I used to have that mentality when I was younger in my religious days. And it takes a lot to break through. But the ultimate reward you feel is that if you stick within this cult, you follow the commandments, or you stick with your leader, you will be rewarded. You are doing it for your benefit. Ultimately, your benefit. Ultimately, your own ego. And when you attach that type of self-identity and self-value within that cult, within that group, that is when people are willing to do whatever it takes to make what the leader says come true, or the prophecies come true, or for that cult to maintain or grow its power. It's very scary. So today, the cult of trickle-down economics, combined with the cult of authoritarian control and the Jesus justification, are this perfect storm of shit that we have to deal with. The trickle-down economics and all sorts of bad policies that were passed on from Reagan through Clinton, through Bush, through Reagan, through Bush, through Clinton, through Bush Jr., and through Obama, and through Trump, have been devastating to the American people. The impoverished and the middle class have not seen their wages go up in a long time. I myself have witnessed and experienced 2 economic crashes. I went and got 2 college degrees, applied into the workforce, made my dreams come true down in LA. But in terms of finances, dreams have not been coming true because of the cost of living and paying off student loans. Really don't have a lot of wealth to build or to invest in compared to the counterparts of my peers 30 years ago, 50 years ago. So these policies have been out in the open for us to criticize and see the effects for years and years and years. So for those that are in power, the politicians and the corporations, why do they want to maintain these policies? Greed. Greed. Look at Flint, Michigan. Why upend and uproot the established government program that was giving water to the people? Sell it to a corporate identity. That corporate identity screwed up harshly, terribly, deadly. So many people had died or been poisoned because they wanted to skimp on regulation and safety protocols. And when the leaders came in there, even President Obama, their behavior was appalling to the people there in Flint, Michigan. And if you want a more detailed documentation of what actually happened, watch Michael Moore's documentary. He's from that place. And when you hear the people in Flint, Michigan who were so enthused and happy to see that President Barack Obama was coming to visit them, and then afterwards there was a bunch of military operations occurred in the abandoned buildings that was freaking out the neighbors. I mean, it just showed that the rich, powerful, and power do not want to relinquish that power. They want to get more and more of that power. So here we are in a troubled country where healthcare is not affordable for the majority of us. We are one accident away from being bankrupt and our entire lives and career being put on hold or shifted in such a way that we have to now fight through depression on top of working multiple jobs and doing our best not to get sick. Then a pandemic came, right? Things were bad, and then the pandemic came as well. And our government and its capitalistic wife or its capitalistic ideas could not be flexible enough to help the people and instead decided to help the markets first, just like in 2008. How do we break from this? Well, I voted for Joe Biden. I'm not enthusiastic about it, but I vote for the planet. And Democratic policies have been better for the planet than Republican policies, which is why I will vote for any policy that's more pro-planet than anything else. But we have to haunt his dreams if Joe Biden wins. If his administration has the right people in the right positions, great. But just because he wins doesn't mean our problems are going to go away. We still have to deal with corporate greed. We still have to deal with authoritarianism. We still have to deal with climate change, as year after year after year is going to get worse unless we make some dramatic changes. So when I hear Vice President Joe Biden says, we're going to get off oil, great. That should be the answer of every politician. And any politician who says, like John Kasich, oh no, we're going to keep fracking, we're going to keep doing this, that is evil. It is wrong. And when I say that, some people may say, well, what about our jobs? I agree with you. I don't want you to be destitute. I don't want to wipe out all of these jobs that is putting food on your table and then telling you, oh, go learn how to code. Fuck that. Our government, our nation, is smart enough to come up with programs that can help these people transition to a different job or help communities stay afloat as we wean ourselves off of the dependency of products that are killing us and the planet. And for any leader who doesn't at least bring that mentality to the forefront and instead says, oh, nothing's going to fundamentally change, or we're not going to ban fracking, I think about those 12 years we have left and how more concrete that sounds when I hear those things. Now, in the world of politics and trying to win, there's political promises and saying what people want to hear so you don't scare them, and then you start to increase the policies or the discussion about it. But we do need leaders with backbones that are willing to do the right thing and not kowtow to a bunch of dipshits on Twitter or to a Republican Party that is so hypocritical, that is so evil in its greed and doing whatever it can to maintain power. And the Democrats are guilty of this too, but in these last number of years, it has been such a tragedy, such a travesty. And we're talking all the way back from the 2000 election with the Supreme Court ruling and all the hanging Chad bullshit in Florida. And then once again, the popular vote versus the Electoral College between Hillary Clinton and President Trump. I am a bit encouraged by seeing the amount of people that have been active on social media, not just the celebrities, okay, but everyone part of this zeitgeist fervor to vote. And I appreciate it, but I just put out who I voted for. And that's another compromise as the planet dies, as I said. I'd prefer not to talk about politics, honestly, but because people's religion has infected our politics, I have to talk about both until we're free from it. Because these policies are affecting us every single day. Your friend who may have a secret pregnancy right now could have the option to, take the baby to term, have an abortion, which is, nobody wants an abortion, right? Nobody wants it. It's a terrible thing, but it should be available for any woman that needs it. Period. I mean, and women should decide. It's their body. So when people with a religious fervor come in and say, no, it's a sin. Now, where does the justification come from, right? Where does the justification come from? And this is the Jesus justification. For a government, for old men to tell women what they have access to within their own bodies, right? And it takes two to tango to make a baby. So the arguments that I've seen of men not being held accountable, okay, there's an argument for that, but at the end, women should be able to control their bodies. So the justification that people have that shouldn't be the case is because of their religion. But even the Bible, even Elohim and Jehovah are pro-abortion. They even give commandments and instructions on how to abort babies in the Old Testament. So where did this anti-abortion fervor come from? It came from the pulpits. It came from the preachers. It came from this idea to insulate people in this bubble of an us versus them. Oh, they're pro-abortion. They're evil. They are against God. It's manipulation and control. It is cult-like thinking. So again, it is a battle. It is a battle between the secular, technological, scientific, empathy, anecdotal experiences versus a text from 2,000 years ago written by men about imaginary beings and a mystical blood cult that tell everybody they should kill homosexuals, right? So how can you base your government, or how can anybody say that America is a Christian nation? I used to think that. I used to say that. I used to get upset if people said America is not a Christian nation. When President Barack Obama said America is no longer a Christian nation, it's a nation of all these people. He's right, but we should never be a Christian nation. We shouldn't be any religious nation. We should be a nation, the United States of America. So if Joe Biden wins, we're going to haunt his dreams to make sure we pass policies that are good for the people and good for the planet. If President Trump wins, I'm going to have a lot more gray hairs, but the fight will continue. And not the stupid Twitter tweet identity politics fight. I'm talking about the hardcore policies being passed at a local level. Because if the federal level is so beyond redemption at this point with its network of grifters that have taken over, then at least we can do something at the local level, and we can have more impact at the local level. So either way, we won't give up the fight. No matter who wins, we still have more to fight for. So here we are on the brink of this election. I have spent as much time as I can to be as informed as possible about the current state of affairs with this nation and to be a better informed citizen and uphold my oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. As we trudge through this, I again prefer to embrace my people on the right and say, let's talk this out. We can find common ground. I'm sure we have more in common than not. Whatever you believe, whatever God you worship or text you consider scripture, you have the absolute right to believe that. And I will defend that right for you. I will also defend my right to criticize it and defend my right to embrace my spirituality, which is completely devoid of any man-made religion, and to find the truth that is out there through whatever consciousness that exists in this universe. That's the beauty of this nation, is that we can have people who are Christian, Jew, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, spiritualist, atheist, and have them live comfortable, secure, safe lives integrated into a community of all sorts of different people with the same ultimate goal: truth, justice, and defining what is the American way. That's what voting's all about. The final piece that I'd like to bring up is why the right is so bent on making their way happen, even through cheating and lying and scandals and voter suppression and racism. They even said it themselves. If you watch with Seth Meyers, Closer Look with Seth Meyers, he even breaks out transcripts of people saying, do whatever it takes. Even if they call you racist or a voter suppressor, we are fighting a battle of good versus evil. And then Glenn Beck came out and said, I had a dream that we weren't just fighting Democrats, we're fighting Satan himself. This is crazy talk. This is crazy talk in a cult of Christian fascists. These Christian fascists, like Mike Pompeo, Betsy DeVos, Brother Eric Prince, and a number of others, Mitch McConnell, all of these people who wanted to ram through these conservative justices on the court and pass and push legislation and policies that is pro their world viewpoint of a Christian nation. They think that whatever they do is justified in the name of God because they're trying to usher in the second coming of Jesus Christ. And America and the Constitution was founded by the Lord God in order to establish a free nation for Christianity to grow and be spread around the world, and to usher in the second coming of Jesus by establishing Israel as a nation state and rebuilding the temple in that lifetime. Now, the prophecy back then, when after the war and there was peace in the region, a lot of press were asking this rabbi, so what happens? You now have control of the Temple Mount, or you've now made a negotiation for the Temple Mount. And they asked, so what happens next? And the rabbi said, well, a temple must be built on the ancient location of Solomon's temple. And the press said, well, that's where the Dome of the Rock is. And the rabbi said, yes. And the press were like, so you're going to remove the Dome of the Rock, which would be a war if that happened. And the rabbi said, no, we will keep all people's sacred sites safe. So then the press asked, well, how are you going to do this? The temple must be built in this generation in order for the prophecy to be fulfilled. It has to be built on Solomon's temple, where the Dome of the Rock currently is. But you have to build the temple without removing the Dome of the Rock. How are you going to do this? And the rabbi just shrugged his shoulders and said, that's God's problem. So leaders that have this mentality and they don't separate it from their job and from their political life, instead they use it to justify their actions in the political world, that, my friends, is the reason why we need to have separation of church and state. And we currently don't have it. And we won't have it as long as the right continues with these manipulations. I shouldn't just say the right, the current Republican Party with these manipulations. And if the left or the Democrats don't call them out on this bullshit and instead rely too much on the woke Olympics, they're not going to pass policies that are going to affect the people positively, and they will continue to lose to these bully hypocrites that are running the Republican Party. There's my rant. All right, well, thank you for indulging me on the current meta thinking of why our nation is like this. When I hear the phrase "Make America Great Again," it's a dog whistle, but the tax rates in the 50s under Dwight D. Eisenhower would tax the rich up to 90%. If we did go back to those tax rates, we'd have money for infrastructure, schools, technological programs. We could help families that are transitioning out of fossil fuel jobs into different jobs. There's so much more that we can do when we properly tax the rich, but they don't want to be taxed. They want to keep their greed. Thank you so much again for listening to me as we about to embark on this new adventure of the 2020 election starting tomorrow. I hope that you have a great week during this, that you're able to bunker up somewhere if that's the case. But let's put out the good vibes that we're going to get through this together. We're not going to have any violent outbursts. We'll be able to talk to each other as neighbors and as family and hopefully as friends, even if we attach ourselves to the Republican or the Democrats or the Independents or the Green Party or whatever. Because at the end of the day, we are Americans, and together, we need to stand up for truth, justice, and we will define what is the American way. Thank you. I'll see you online.